take two in terms of doing this preview of the second match day of the MLS is Back tournament. So as you guys know from yesterday, for whatever reason, my first take in terms of the preview for the MLS is Back tournament audio did not work whatsoever, and that I had a lot of people basically commented that the audio doesn't work, and that yesterday I had to make an emergency preview for the second match day of the MLS is Back tournament because I know the first game is going to be kicking off this morning. So I already, of course, did that, and I'll leave a link in the description, and also we'll put it on at the end of the video, in the end screen of that video where I previewed the first 4 games. But let's take a look at the last 8 games that's going to be happening on the second match day of the MLS is Back tournament. And we start off the first game between Atlanta versus FC Cincinnati, which will be kicking off at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific time. Atlanta, of course, lost 1-0 against the Red Bulls, while Cincinnati looked like they were the worst team so far in this tournament by taking that 4-0 beatdown against their in-state rival Columbus. In the last 2 head-to-head matchup, or the last 3 head-to-head matchup, they met earlier this season. It was the second game before the shutdown happened, and it was Atlanta with a 2-1 win against FC Cincinnati. Last year, Atlanta was able to grab a 2-0 away win against FC Cincinnati before both of these teams met for the first time, and it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So, yeah, obviously, since both of these teams are sitting at 0 point, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot with all these teams facing against each other and currently have 0 point in the tournament, it's a must-win for them. I mean, as I said before, you just cannot go 2 games in the tournament with a loss and expect to have a high chance of moving on into the next round. And I have a feeling Atlanta might have bigger pressure in this game compared to FC Cincinnati. Obviously, I still think FC Cincinnati, after that 4-0 loss that they suffered in Columbus, is still a work in progress, and something tells me they probably will not make it to the next round. Whereas for Atlanta, there's definitely high expectation for this club, and even though they don't have Joseph Martinez for this tournament, you would have think that their bare minimum was going to get through this group. So this is definitely a big game for them. It will be interesting to see how they, of course, will do against FC Cincinnati. And you kind of also expect them to score some goals against FC Cincinnati. Like, that Cincy defense against Columbus was probably the leakiest defense I've seen so far throughout this tournament. And that if Atlanta does not score a couple of goals against FC Cincinnati, they are going to be in real jeopardy of not moving on into the next round. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the Canadian Classique between Montreal Impact versus Toronto FC, as this game is going to be kicking off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Montreal, of course, lost to New England in the last match as they lost 1-0 to them, while TFC drew 2-2 against DC United, but it really felt like a loss for them because they had a 2-0 lead. They were up a man for the entire second half, and yet somehow, in some way, they found a way to blow that 2-0 lead, and they blew it literally with 6 minutes to go in the game. Like, that improbable comeback for DC United should have never had happened. And in terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup in this Canadian Classique, this, of course, is not including the Canadian Championship, because I know they have met a lot in the Canadian Championship, but this is only league play, where in the last match it was TFC getting a 2-0 win against Montreal. I'm not quite sure why I wrote 2-1 there. It was actually a 2-0 result. And then in the reverse fixture, it was TFC again getting the 2-0 resort against Montreal. Then Montreal, of course, returned the favor and win 2-0 against TFC, while TFC won 3-1 against Montreal after that. And then the Impact, of course, winning 1-0 against TFC. So, the pendulum seems to be swinging in terms of these last 5 head-to-head matchup in the Canadian Classique. And if you want to include the Canadian Championship, back in last year, it was Montreal that was able to win that Canadian Championship. They won the first leg 1-0. They did lose the second leg 1-0, but of course won it on penalties because Toronto cannot win games on penalties. So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting game to see. Obviously, this game will not go to penalties, so that might be some good news for TFC fans to be a little bit relieved. But obviously, I'm pretty sure they want to get one over over their Canadian counterpart, and especially what happened in the last game and how that collapse happened. They definitely want to get the 3 points and don't want to look back at that game as the one that not only got away from them, but could potentially be the one where it could really cost them at the end in terms of the difference between moving on into the round of 16 and getting eliminated and flying back to Canada. Whereas for Montreal, they didn't look impressive whatsoever against New England, and that Thierry Henry, he's got to do something about that attack, which looked very lackluster against New England, and that if their attack does not get going for these next 2 games, they might be sending packing back to Canada, and that it will be a very short tournament for the Montreal Impact. Moving on, in terms of the next match, is the Columbus Crew versus the Red Bulls. This game kicks off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, and I bet Columbus fans are praying to the weather gods that they're not going to have to suffer something similar to what happened last time, where they had to stay up almost past midnight to watch their team to start playing, and had to pretty much stay up the middle of the night to watch them play in the first game. Although I think it was kind of worth it when you, of course, able to put an absolute beating against your in-state rival, as they did, of course, win 4-0 against FC Cincinnati. Well, the Red Bulls, they got a huge 1-0 win against Atlanta United, and in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, Columbus seems to kind of had the Red Bulls numbers in these last 5 head-to-head matchup. They won 3-2 last year on the road against the Red Bulls. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Now, the other 2 matchup happened during the playoffs, and I believe it was the conference semifinal that this fixture was happening, and it was Columbus, of course, winning 1-0 in the first leg, but the Red Bulls were able to overcome that 1-0 deficit and won 3-0 in the second leg. The other meeting, Columbus was able to win 3-2 against the Red Bulls, and that, again, Columbus seems to have the Red Bulls number, and I have a feeling they're going to be favorites again in this game, because I think they look like the most impressive team in this tournament. Now, albeit they of course, were playing against an FC Cincinnati defense that was pretty much non-existent, but there was also some players that I really was impressed in the first game. One of those is Lucas Zalarian, who I really think he has an early contention of potentially being the best player in this tournament, with the way that he scored that wonderful free kick and also assisting too in that game against FC Cincinnati. So yeah, the Red Bulls going to have a hands full against this Columbus attack, and that would be interesting to see whether or not if they are able to get something out of this. And that I also think that whoever wins this game most likely is going to top the group, and that whoever wins this game, I think, is going to move on into the next round of the round of 16, because as I said before, the target score in terms of moving on to the round of 16 is going to be 6 points. Once you reach that 6-point margin, you should be automatically make it to the round of 16, and that I don't think I have ever heard of a World Cup format like this where a team have 6 points in the group stage and they did not move on into the next round. So yeah, I think 6 points should be enough to move on into the next round, and let's see who could potentially get that crucial 3 points to get 6 points in the group and move on into the next round of this MLS's back tournament. But moving on, in terms of the next match, now these next 2 matches are going to be interesting, because this match between DC United versus New England kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and at the very next match, it's between SKC versus Colorado, that also kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. And this is actually not the only game that's going to be happening during that night, as both of these games is actually going to be taking place at the same time, and obviously the reason that being is because we had some schedule kind of conflict. Once Nashville, of course, is no longer in the group, they had to kind of realign the schedule a little bit. Although I kind of feel like they probably could have put the DC versus New England game in the morning, and doesn't have like a simultaneous kind of fixture between both of these games. But hey, at least this kind of feels a little bit like the regular season, where the regular season I always have to deal with this issue with games being overlapping each other, and that of course I'm gonna have to try my best in terms of keeping eye on one game, but also keeping eye on the other to make sure I don't miss some important action that happened in both of these games. So when I do the review of these two games, I won't be as much detail as it is, because I will only kind of, like, depending on how each of these games is going to play. If this game turns out to be a blowout, I might just look at this one and watch this one closely. Or if one of these games are just really boring, I'll just switch to the other game to see if there's actually action that is happening. But that being said, let's talk about this one between DC United versus the New England Revolution. And, you know, this one is a matchup between a team that already have 3 points and a team that absolutely stole a point against Toronto in the last match. DC, of course, drew 2-2 against Toronto, while New England, of course, won 1-0 against the Montreal Impact. In the last 5 head-to-head, DC and New England played to a 2-2 draw. Then it was New England and DC played to a 1-1 draw before DC did win 2-0 against New England, and New England, of course, win 3-2 against DC United before DC United returned the favored and win 1-0 against New England. And one thing to note is that Junior Moreno is not going to be playing in this game for DC United after picking up that red card, so we'll see how that might have a factor into it. But yeah, this is kind of an interesting one. I mean, you know, obviously New England would love to try to get that crucial 3 points to get to that target score of 6 points to move on into the next round. But knowing how DC United show a lot of tenacity in that last game against TFC and really show that never say die kind of mentality, it's going to be tough for New England to try to get 3 points in that. They got to make sure that even if they have the lead in this game, that they should not just switched off and allow DC back in the game, because we already saw how once you decide to let DC back into the game, they will take advantage of that. But yeah, moving on, in terms of the next match, and the match that is going to be simultaneously happening with the DC United versus New England Revolution match, is SKC versus Colorado. Now, this game featured a team that, well, this game actually featured both teams that have currently sits at 0 point, and when that, of course, happens, you know it's a must-win for both of these teams. SKC, of course, lost that heartbreaker against Minnesota, so as they lost 2-1 in that game, and Colorado, of course, lost 2-0 against their Rocky Mountain companion RSL. And the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was Colorado winning 3-2 against SKC on the road. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams before it was a 1-0 win for SKC over Colorado. Both teams then drew 2-2 against each other, and then Colorado, of course, winning 1-0 against SKC. And, you know, for SKC, they're going to have to face a little bit of a uphill battle in this game, because just like DC United, they're going to also be missing a player due to the fact that one of their players got a red card in that last game, and that player, unfortunately, is Tim Melia, and that, unfortunately, they're going to have to start Richard Sanchez again in this game, and that I didn't really feel like he looked very impressive when he came on after Tim Melia got sent off in the 73rd minute. So yeah, they're gonna really hope that Colorado is a team that kind of looks like the one against RSL, where they just could not get anything going for on the attack. And I feel like the Rapids, now knowing the fact that SKC is down to their backup goalkeeper, I have a feeling they're going to be a little bit more adventurous going forward, and they're going to really test Richard Sanchez to see if he can, of course, make those big saves. But either way, you know, this is a big game for both of these teams, and that if either of these teams lose this one, I have a feeling pretty much their chances of moving on into the next round is completely diminished. So yeah, we shall see who, of course, will win this match from Group D. But moving on, in terms of the next match, and from winless team in Group D to teams that have already won their first match in Group D, and that they're going to be facing off each other. And that, of course, is RSL and the Loons in this game, as this game is going to be kicking off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. RSL, of course, as I mentioned, they were able to win 2-0 against their Rocky Mountain companion Colorado Rapids, and look very impressive by winning that game. And then Minnesota, of course, that come from behind victory where they scored 2 stoppage time goal against SKC to win 2-1 against them. And in terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup, Minnesota, of course, won 3-1 in the last fixture between both of these teams. Before, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. There was another 1-1 draw between both of these teams. And then it was Minnesota winning 3-2 against RSL before RSL winning 2-0 against Minnesota. Now, despite the fact that I was very impressive of how the Loons was able to come back in that game and actually got all 3 points in that. Like, when I saw how the Loons play in that game, and especially for the first 65 minutes, you would be drunk if you think that we had any chance of getting all 3 points in this game. And even when we were up a man as the time was winding down, I was just hoping we can finally get that goal to get the equalizer and just get a point out of it. And Lord and behold, not only the fact that we got that goal, but we got another one late in the game to just complete a smash and grab kind of 3 points against not Colorado, but against SKC in that game. Now, obviously, I'm assuming we're not going to have that same luxury when we play against RSL, and that I do still have concern about how, we don't know how the health of Luis Amarilla and Ozzy Alonso is going to be in this game. I mean, Ozzy Alonso didn't play in the last game because he had a groin injury, and then Amarilla literally suffered a groin injury as we were about to kick off in the game. So if they're not going to be available in this game, I have a feeling we're going to have to do something similar to what we did against SKC, and that is we have to absorb as much pressure as possible, and hopefully someone can, of course, do well on the counter-attack, because I know for a fact that missing 3 of our most important starters in these tournaments is definitely not going to be a way for us to win a lot of games, and that the only way we can, of course, win these games is that we just had to do what we've been doing in the first couple of games, which is we're just going to sit deep and try to find a way to counter-attack and try to score on the transition in this game against RSL. So, yeah, we shall see how this game, of course, would go. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be the Portland Timbers versus the Houston Dynamo. And both of these teams, surprisingly, look very impressive in the first game. Well, I wouldn't say for Portland it's a very big surprise that they look impressive, because, they were playing against a Galaxy team that was completely depleted, and they were able to get a 2-1 win against them, albeit in the latter part, there was definitely some tense moment for Timbers fan to endure, because when they had Zabarek got sent off in the 73rd minute, and also he's not going to be available in this game, things were getting very tense, and that the Galaxy was really pushing to try to do what Minnesota did to SKC, and that is score 2 goals to try to maybe get an equalizer in this game. But of course they weren't able to do that, and the Timbers just hold on to a 2-1 win. Whereas Houston, they really surprised a lot of people against LAFC, and that, I think the only thing Houston will be a little bit disappointed coming out of that LAFC game is that they had a 3-1 lead heading into the second half, and that, they kind of ran out of gas in the second half with the way that they play. And, I think this is going to be something that Tab Ramos is going to keep an eye on, and that I have no doubt that coming into this game, Tab Ramos is going to do the same style that he did against LAFC again, and he's going to implement it against the Portland Timbers. Like, the Timbers is one of those teams that still kind of find it tough to try to break team down, and that knowing the fact that now they're going to have, they also know that the Timbers backline is a little bit suspect after that game against the Galaxy. This just makes it kind of just as simple as they just completely cut open that backline of LAFC with their transitional game back in the last game. Although one thing I think Tab Ramos will definitely keep an eye on is that he hopes that his team doesn't run out of energy in the second half, because, again, I really felt like they ran out of energy in the second half with that fast-paced transitional game that they played in the first half, and they literally had to hang on to dear life to just get a 3-3 draw against LAFC. Now, in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was Portland with a 4-0 win against the Dynamo, but then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Before the Dynamo actually won 4-1 against the Portland Timbers. It was a 2-1 win for the Timbers before the Dynamo returned the favorite and win 2-1 against the Portland Timbers. And yeah, this is going to be a very interesting game, in that no doubt about the fact that the Timbers is going to face a much tougher challenge against the Dynamo compared to they face against the Galaxy, and be interesting to see whether or not if they can get the crucial 3 points to get to 6 points to potentially move on to the next round, or will Houston continue to surprise us and get some crucial points in a group that nobody thought that they were going to do anything, in a group that pretty much everybody thought that they were the punching bag of that Group F. But now, moving on into the last match of this preview, and it's the match that I think a lot of people has been waiting for me to preview, well, at least for the league's sake, that is. And that, of course, is El Tráfico between LAFC versus the LA Galaxy, as this game is going to be taking place at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. I feel like they probably should have switched this game to the Portland versus Houston kickoff time, because I think since this is such a much must-watch game in this tournament, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be tuning in for this game, I feel like they would have just put it at 8 p.m. Eastern and drawn even more of the ratings, because after all, the whole reason why this tournament was taking place is not just because the league want to make some revenue that they of course lost during this pandemic, but the league obviously wants some ratings, and that I kind of feel like they could have made a better decision and just moved this game to the perfect prime time slot of 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for such a big game like this. But nevertheless, it is still a pretty big game, and that I feel like the ratings are going to be pretty high in this game. And that this, of course, is the 7 El Tráfico meeting, although this is going to be one of the rarest one where we are not going to see Carlos Vela in this El Tráfico, and it's kind of a shame because it'll be very interesting to see Carlos Vela and Chicharito facing off against each other in El Tráfico, but I guess we're just going to have to wait for that to happen in the future. And the last 6 head-to-head El Tráfico, obviously LAFC finally got their first El Tráfico win against the Galaxy, and it came in probably the perfect time in the playoffs as they knocked them out of the conference semifinal by winning 5-3 against them. Then it was a 3-3 draw between both of these teams. The Galaxy, of course, then won 3-2 against LAFC. Before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then it was a 2-2 draw between LAFC and the Galaxy, and it was a game when LAFC had a 2-0 lead, and then they blew it late in the game. And likewise, in the first game, it was the Galaxy winning 4-3 against LAFC. We know that first game is a game where LAFC went up 3-0, and then the Galaxy started to eat into that lead. And as soon as the game was at 3-2, that's when Zlatan happened, and that he scored the final 2 goal, include a spectacular goal from pretty much from about 40 yards out to tie the game up for LAFC, and that I'll just kind of leave it there in terms of what happened in the next moment, because I think LAFC fans probably have heard enough about what happened in the first ever El Tráfico between them and the Galaxy. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how this game is going to go. I mean, obviously, with the fact that when you look at how both of these teams play in their first game, they definitely did not look impressive whatsoever. And especially on the defensive end, they have looked very poor in the first game of this MLS's back tournament. So something tells me, with the way that we have so many goals that always happen in El Tráfico, that this game could be something that could be like a barn burner again, where I won't be surprised we're gonna see like a 4-3 or even a 4-4 kind of result with the way that how both of these teams play. Although that being said, I have a feeling realistically we might see kind of a blowout for LAFC rather than we will see like a 4-4 draw in this game, because, you know, LAFC, their attack is by far a miles better than what the Galaxy attack is. And unless if Chicharito actually showed up in this game, I just don't see how the Galaxy can really match up against LAFC. And I think of all the El Tráfico, if you want to see the quality between both of these teams, this is probably the widest in terms of the gap of quality between both of these teams in this El Tráfico meeting. And that, you know, obviously I think this one might be the one that LAFC is definitely going to be heavy favored to potentially beat their in-city rival, the Galaxy. But again, you never know. You know, we said this before, where it looks like LAFC would buy for the better quality against the Galaxy, and the Galaxy basically surprised us all and scored a couple of goals in that game. By the way, this should be a very interesting fixture, and it's a good way to basically end our preview for the MLS is Back tournament match day number 2. And I hope you guys, of course, enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys hit a like, smash that subscribe button. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games, and also let me know in the comments below what your prediction is for these 8 games that's going to be happening on the second match day of the MLS is Back tournament. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.